Well, good morning all. Good morning. Warm welcome, and to all our listeners. This morning's study, I was thinking I have two titles actually. I started off with one, the story and the examples of Esau and Jacob. And then I thought, maybe brotherly love is maybe a better one. So it's quite a revelation when you read the story of these two brothers, because they were twins, and twins generally have a great bond of friendship between them, a really close bond. But these two seem to have been at odds with each other and rivals even from an early age. But of course, in this situation, the parents are very important, and since each of these parents had their own favourite child, one could conclude that Isaac and Rebekah were not just the most perfect of examples of parenthood. But we see that Esau was an outdoor man, a skilled hunter, and he probably didn't care all that much for the finer things in life. What we would call today maybe a man's man, or a manly man, while Jacob, on the other hand, was more a stay-at-home guy, and liked the finer things of life. And he was more prone to obeying his parents in what they required. But he was his mother's favourite, while Esau was the father's favourite. Now, it was a bad setting when parents have a favourite child, which harboured rivalry, contention, and bitterness, which turned to hatred over a period of time. And especially when Jacob blackmailed Esau out of his birthright for a bowl of lentil stew. And he deceived his father and stole Esau's blessing as the firstborn. These were really serious matters, weren't they? But years later, Jacob even realised then what it was like to be betrayed and deceived, as Laban did exactly the same to him. He thought he was marrying Rebekah, and what did he get? He got Leah instead, and had to work 14 years to cover all this as two wives. So he learned a big lesson. But Esau was the firstborn son, and as such, a great responsibility was upon him, as in any family with wealth or estate. He would have been expected to respect that privilege, but he didn't. When it came to making choices, he didn't seem to have all that much sense. He sure made some horrible decisions for his life. He didn't consider the consequences of his actions, and he didn't consider anything beyond the moment that he was in. He was hungry. What was that birthright? What good was it going to be to him? What was an estate? What was position when you're starving with hunger? Now, obviously when he came in from the fields, maybe he had been 2 or 3 days maybe without proper food and nourishment. And the smell of a lovely bowl of stew was just too much for him. So he says, I'm hungry, I'm dying of hunger. Give me that. And probably he didn't really think beyond his bowl of stew that Jacob would carry this through, that he actually was going to hold him to it. But he did. But he must have bitterly regretted a lot of his choices. He also had a fast temper, but he was also very forgiving, because he forgave Jacob for his treachery against him. And God blessed him. You see, God blesses you whenever you forgive people, forgive things. And he also then became a rich and powerful. So rich and powerful that he and Jacob had to divide and separate and spread themselves further afield. So Esau moved to the south into the hill country. But there are 3 things I think that Esau did that may have helped bring about his downfall. He married 2 Canaanite women, and he also married the daughter of Ishmael. which may have contributed to the conflict that ended up between Israel, or mainly Judah, and his neighbour and land border by Esau. Because the Canaanite, Jacob and Rebekah did not want their sons to marry into the Canaanite women. Neither did any of the Judah. They were not to marry outside their own people. So Esau had married the two Canaanite women, but he also heard then that Rebekah had said to Jacob, "Go to our own kin and pick a wife there, and don't be taken of the Canaanite women and the ones around them." So Esau, he heard this conversation, and he thought, well, I'll be able to please my parents, and I'll go and take a wife from our own people. So he goes off to Ishmael and marries his daughter. Well, he didn't think beyond the moment there either, because Ishmael was Jacob's half-brother, and there was a bit of contention between them two. I wouldn't say they were on the very best of terms, so it didn't really, it possibly could, I'm not saying it does exactly, but it could have added to the conflict that there was between them. But anyhow, to continue the story, it is important to give the nations that they became their proper titles, as known in the Bible, because Esau was the father of the Edomites, and that was the nation of Edom, and their capital was Petra, a city considered impregnable because it was cut out of solid rock and in a rock cliff and set in a canyon that could only be entered through a small gap. Now you can see that, actually, if you look it up, you can see the city of Petra. It looks very impressive. But they really did feel very secure and very proud of their city. And today it is considered as one of the marvels of the ancient world, but only as a tourist attraction now. So that was Esau. And Jacob was the father of the Israelite nation, and it was his son Judah, which was shortened to Jews, who was Esau's, the Edomites' closest neighbour, and on the southern side. Now, good neighbourliness was not evident when the Israelite nation was returning from exile in Egypt, when the Edomites would not let them pass over their land, their territory. So if you see how it lies coming from Egypt up through the Edomite land and into Judah, or into Palestine, you can see why it would have been much shorter for them to come that distance, and they wouldn't let them do that. They had to go around. But as I say, they showed no brotherly love or compassion to them. And over the years, Edom rejoiced at the misfortunes of Israel and Judah. And when King Jehoram and Jerusalem were attacked by a Philistine Arab coalition, that was around 848 to 841 BC, and when Jerusalem was completely destroyed by the Babylonians in 586 BC, instead of helping his brother when in need, Edom let them be destroyed, and he plundered what was left behind. They helped others attack them, and they laughed at their plight. Then they handed over those who were escaping to their enemies. So they really did not have very much love for their neighbours, or any compassion even on an individual as people. Now from this account we can see ill deeds can be passed on down, and are indeed passed down from generation to generations. Family feuds kept going for hundreds and thousands of years. And we see this, it's happening all over the world today. And just as Edom didn't countenance God in their lives, neither do the nations that we are part of. People don't countenance God in anything nowadays. He's not even thought about. But we remember that the human race descended from one set of parents, and as such, We are all brothers and sisters, and all children of God, whether good or bad. However, we are not immune from the consequences of our actions, any more than Esau and Jacob were. We see that the actions of all the people around us, people that have hatred borne down through generations of years, is having an awful toll on our world today. It's not necessary. We live in a very good time to be alive, when things are so good for us. And yet, here we have this hatred going on. But the book of Obadiah was written against the Edomites, the Jews, and to God's people everywhere. It was written as examples and warnings to all people everywhere. We see that Esau's sons were kings and chiefs and rulers before there was any in Israel. And Amalek, Esau's grandson, was the first to attack the Israelites on their way to the promised land. They were a proud and haughty people and thought they were above the law and felt totally secure in their own strength. But Obadiah was a prophet in Judah who told of God's judgment against the nation of Edom. So we'll just turn there to see what God sent the message to Obadiah to give to the Edomites. It's the shortest book in the Bible. It has only one chapter, but it certainly has plenty of oomph. It lets people know what God really thinks of people doing the wrong thing. So that's Obadiah. Okay. It says the vision of Obadiah. Thus says the Lord God concerning Edom. We have heard a report from the Lord, and a messenger has been sent among the nations. Arise, and let us rise up against her for battle. Behold, I will make you small among the nations. You shall be greatly despised. The pride of your heart has deceived you, you who dwell in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high, you who say in your heart, who will bring me down to the ground? Though you exalt yourself as high as the eagle, and though you set your nest among the stars, from there I will bring you down, says the Lord. If thieves had come to you, if robbers by night, oh, how you will be cut off. Would they not have stolen till they had enough? If grape gatherers had come to you, would they not have left some gleanings? Oh, how Esau shall be searched out, how his hidden treasures shall be sought after. All the men in your confederacy shall force you to the border. The men at peace with you shall deceive you and prevail against you. Those who eat your bread shall lay a trap for you. No one is aware of it. Will I not in that day, says the Lord, even destroy the wise men from Edom, and understanding from the mountains of Esau? Then your mighty men, O Teman, shall be dismayed, to the end that every one from the mountains of Esau may be cut off by slaughter. Why? For your violence against your brother Jacob, shame shall cover you, and you shall be cut off forever. In the day that you stood on the other side, in the day that strangers carried captives his forces, when foreigners entered his gates and cast lots for Jerusalem. Even you were as one of them, but you should not have gazed on the day of your brother, in the day of his captivity. Nor should you have rejoiced over the children of Judah in the day of their destruction. Nor should you have spoken proudly in the day of distress. You should not have entered the gates of my people in the day of their calamity. Indeed, you should not have gazed on their affliction in the day of their calamity, nor laid hands on their substance in the day of their calamity. You should not have stood at the crossroads to cut off those among them who escaped, nor should you have delivered up those among them who remained in the day of distress. For the day of the Lord upon all the nations is near. As you have done, it shall be done to you. Your reprisal shall return upon your own head. For as you drank on my holy mountain, so shall all the nations drink continually. Yes, they shall drink and swallow, and they shall be as though they had never been. But on Mount Zion there shall be deliverance, and there shall be holiness. The house of Jacob shall possess their possessions. The house of Jacob shall be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame. But the house of Esau shall be stubble. They shall kindle them and devour them, and no survivors shall remain of the house of Esau, for the Lord has spoken. The inhabitants of the south shall possess the mountains of Esau, and the inhabitants of the Philistine lowlands. They shall possess the fields of Ephraim, and the fields of Samaria. Benjamin shall possess Gilead, and the captives of their hosts of the children of Israel shall possess the land of the Canaanites as far as Zarephath. The captives of Jerusalem who are in Shepherd shall possess the cities of the south. Then Saviour shall come to Mount Zion to judge the mountains of Esau, and the kingdom shall be the Lord's. That's some indictment against Esau, wasn't it? Now you see, of all the nations who fought against Israel and Judah, Esau was the only one God did not show mercy to. They betrayed their blood brothers in times of trouble and aided their brothers' enemies. God takes that very seriously. But the Edomites were routed by Judas Maccabees in 185 BC, and the nation no longer existed by the 1st century AD. It was completely gone. Now, Obadiah brought God's message of judgment on Edom because God was displeased with them, because they really knew right from wrong and they chose the wrong way. Are people any different today? We see arrogance, hatred, dishonesty, and greed and murders continually. Like they think nothing walking up to someone now and just stabbing them for the sake of doing it. Fraud, rape, sexual immorality, and the belittlement of people. And some may just wonder where it will all end. But God is the same, yesterday, today, and forever. His judgments are true, and he sees everything, because there is nothing hid from him. We do nothing that God doesn't know about. Nothing is hid from his eyes. And regardless of anyone's sins, God is still in control and will execute judgment on all people, whether we see it immediately, a bit in the future, or way in the future. But Obadiah shows us that evil will be punished. And those faithful to God have a hope for a new future. And that God is sovereign in human history. He has his hand on everything from the beginning of time. And his ultimate purpose is to establish his eternal kingdom. As any nation can be punished for mistreating God's people, no matter how great they think they are, God will punish them. And we have that going on here all the time. Christian people that countenance God are being persecuted in lots of places, and no one says anything. But God sees it, and He will punish them. Just as He will do with any one of us who turns our back on anyone in time of need. When we see a need and don't help, God is countenanced that as sin. And God is not a respecter of persons. All are treated the same. So, it's the same likewise when we entrust ourselves to God and respect His wishes and His commands and rely on Him daily. He will respond and feed and water and protect us. He allowed Judah and Israel to be warred against, burdened and destroyed many times. He destroyed their cities and He took them captive for their continual disobedience. And like every 40 or 60 years, they took off and started to do the wrong thing. Now, it all depends too on good leaders, because when they had a good king and he respected God and His wishes, they lived in peace and harmony and done everything right. Then they got one that wasn't good, and he took them off in a different direction. So you see, God punished them, and then they repented, and they brought them back again. But eventually they do repent, and He sought His forgiveness, and in His mercy He always did restore them. Today it is no different. He still shows great mercy to all who turn to Him. It would just be a great pity that our nations didn't turn to God and ask for forgiveness to show what's the right thing to do, because it's sure needed. But the Edomites did not repent, and they did not seek God until they disappeared and are no longer. But the scriptures are always saying to us, do not harden your heart. Turn to the Lord and live. Now, when I was doing this here, I had this, our little Because magazine. It was lying there, and I had just lifted it, and I thought, you know, this is very apt for where we are, but this is what I'm saying. It was about divine deliverance during the war, and it was, I'm just going to read you some of this. In an attempt to rescue at least some of this army, the British Prime Minister Winston Churchill ordered the start of Operation Dynamo. Destroyers and transport ships were dispatched to carry out this task, only expecting to evacuate 30,000 men who were trapped on the beaches of Dunkirk at the mercy of the German war machine. Then Adolf Hitler made one of the most widely debated decisions of the war. He ordered his generals to halt for 3 days, which gave the Allies a breathing space to get their evacuation organised. But the evacuation was by no means straightforward. I watched a film, whether they take license with it or not, but it seems Hitler was waiting on some astronomy situation to tell him what to do. But you see, the real astronomer actually sent him a curveball, so it gave him the breathing space. But before long, the harbour became partially blocked by ships that were sunk during attacks by German aircraft. This made it necessary to evacuate troops off the nearby beaches. But the problem was the water there was very shallow. And so the call went out for little ships to come over the channel from England to help. These were motor yachts, fishing vessels, small boats, all privately owned. As a result of these 700 plus little ships, the number of troops who returned to Britain was 338,000, which included 140,000 French soldiers. So what at first looked like a total defeat turned out to be a victory of sorts. 338,000 precious souls who could do absolutely nothing for themselves were delivered from almost certain death or years in a prisoner of war camp. And this is an important bit. This event inspired the famous wartime "We Shall Never Surrender" speech. Church delivered the address to the British Parliament on the 4th of June. He summed up the relief felt by all, and then shared a belief about the nature of the deliverance. In his eyes, this was a miracle of deliverance. Nearly 1,000 ships of all kinds carried over 335,000 men, French and British, out of the jaws of death and shame to their native land. And this same sense of divine deliverance was echoed in churches up and down the country in a service of national thanksgiving on the 9th of June. That day the church walls echoed with a song from the Bible, Psalm 124. Some of the words read, "If the Lord had not been on our side when people attacked us, they would have swallowed us alive. The raging waters would have swept us away. Praise be to the Lord, who has not let us be torn by their teeth. We have escaped like a bird from the fowler's snare. The snare has been broken, and we have escaped. Our help is in the name of the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth." Divine deliverance. So you see, unfortunately, our people today don't believe in that same anymore. All those of the younger generation mainly. But human nature is no different today than it was generations ago. It can be good, it can be very, very good, or it can be bad and very, very evil. It just depends on what we allow ourselves to be influenced by. And we are seeing very evil influences going on in our world today. There is unrest and disturbances in every country almost. We see our youth being stirred up and our youth being destroyed. And we have all these disasters, fires, floods, trains, planes, etc., etc. And the crashing of all these technology things that sends everybody into chaos. But God is allowing mankind to see that they need this help. Mankind greatly needs God's help now at present. They turn this way and that, and they just can't get themselves together. They don't know what to do. We see that here in Britain with Brexit. They just don't know what to do. They're at a loss. Anyhow, but they always find there is an agitator. And they don't know who or what it even drives them all for to be agitating or changing their minds or whatever they're doing. The Prince of the Airways is not something that people really take on board anymore. The Western don't believe in Satan, so they don't know where their problems come from. But I would say, read this short book of Obadiah again and think about what it said and why it was saying it. Because God is saying these words. And the books of the Bible are not children's stories, but information of generations of human beings' mistakes, and is telling us how we can avoid them. We live in an era that for the first time in history we could totally annihilate ourselves, obliterate the whole earth. But make no mistake anyhow, God is in control. He is in full control of his earth, which we have destroyed. And he will wipe out those who will not do justly. Follow his example to love one another, to do good to each other, especially to the household of God. There is a whole lot of work to be done. And our own country is a fine example of needing love and forgiveness, of calm words and patience, because it could escalate into anything again, which would be disastrous for everyone. We need to have that love and forgiveness to try to calm situations, Because there is so much of everybody just gets it on the internet and prints up their immediate thoughts on something, and it's out there, and it stirs up strife. Well, we have to try and be more like Jesus and really less like Esau and Jacob. And hopefully, with God willing, that we will all be delivered. It is our own choice. So thank you and God bless.